Beautiful sounds of Linda the vocalist coming through with Ami Franco. Lotto is the name of this one. 41 minutes past 7 a.m. Good morning to you and yours. Halfway through the week. Happy Wednesday morning. Right now it's time for us to enter Property Explained. We know that you love this part of the show with Tim Akinusi. Talking about, property repossessions. And maybe you are somebody that's gone through this, going through it currently. And when would a bank look at repossessing a property and how to avoid it? Do banks honestly make money from repossessing your property? Tim, is there any merit to the perceptions that banks really are keen to repossess your home because they make money from this practice?
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for having me on. And I think to start off by saying, this dreaded R word, when you're employed, you fear retrenchment. When you are close to retirement, you fear the retirement word. And so when you're a property owner, that R word of repossessions is something that, kind of gets people up at night. But I want to set the record straight, right? There is no merit to the notion that banks enjoy doing property repossessions or that they make money from it. Because in actual fact, the banks are always motivated to see a customer make repayments. However small it is through your financial difficulty, they always want to prevent default as much as possible because they actually lose money through that process, right? So, because in a process called sale and execution, which is pretty much a public auction for the sheriffs, right? They can only recover on average as much as 70% of the value of the loan that they've actually given to you. So, and that's because the property is sold in a distressed way. So of course, you have auctions who are, people are there because they're looking for bargains, and the banks know that, so they typically never recover their money. So as much as possible, they want to avoid that practice and only do it when it's absolutely necessary, that they have no choice.
Yeah, let's talk about that moment, Tim. What is that moment where the bank says, all right, we've had it with you, we're taking the house back?
Right. So typically it would have gone through a series of, your first default, maybe you've defaulted for over 3 months, they start calling you, they start trying to find out how they can restructure your loan agreement or make a payment arrangement. And what typically happens in that case is that buyers get scared and they avoid the banks. And so then the banks have to go through a legal process, and it's quite a lengthy one. So by the time they get the sheriffs involved, right, there is already so much that has transpired.
Sure.
Of course, at this point in time as well, your credit record is impaired because they've now listed your non-payments, etc., etc. So it is not a short process, it is a long one. But when those wheels turn and they turn against you, that's when typically a lot of homeowners start to come forward and want to do deals right at the last moment. And the bank says, you know what, it is so late.
Yeah.
Right. We've exhausted all the options available and we have no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid getting to that point where we are beyond the Rubicon.
Please, Mo, yes.
We want to avoid it at all costs, where there's no turning back. But how do we then make sure that we avoid this process? And also considering, to be fair, I mean, we've had a difficult past couple of years.
Sure.
We take it for granted that the impact of COVID may have had an impact of whatever nature, but for some it was quite significant. So how do we avoid that repossession?
Right. So more just to touch on that point, right? Even through the COVID period, the banks took that payment holiday that they offered people, and they did that because, again, they're demonstrating that they want to avoid a default situation as much as possible.
Sure.
So the best thing to do is to be proactive. Go to the banks, sit with them, and actually tell them, listen, I'm in financial difficulty. This is only how much I can pay if I think it's a short-term issue, but if it's a long-term one, say to them, how can I get through this and what are my options? By going to them early, it means all of the best options on the table for you, right? So there are typically 4 options. One is the restructure of the account, which is in the case of if it's a short-term issue. The second one is that they will actually assist you in selling your house without the distress factor, which means you can actually recover as much as possible and actually even make a profit if you sell your house in time. Right? The third one is that if you sell your house and there's still a shortfall, the banks can forgive as much as 50% of that.
Wow.
Jeez.
Right. So they're really coming to the party around that.
Yeah.
Then on the other side is that they will actually give the person buying a house, they'll try and give them the best deal to be able to acquire a house. And of course, lastly, all of that means that you will not be listed as a for poor conduct by the bureaus.
And I mean, just you talking about it, I'm just getting a lump in my throat seeing those people who actually, you know when they make an announcement that this home is being repossessed, come through. And as a buyer or property investor, you also thinking to yourself, is it really a good idea to purchase a repossessed property, and what are the benefits and maybe pitfalls that one should be aware of when buying a repossessed home?
Right. So, one man's loss is another man's gain.
Oh, yes.
So on the other side, right? As a property investor, if you want to be able to buy repossessed homes, it really is a good investment, but you've got to know what you're doing, right? You've got to do your homework. Obviously, coming into that auction that you're not going to be paying a market-related price for that place. So already you need to know what the property was bought for, what other properties around the area have sold for, and can you fix up the property and have the value of it appreciate beyond the cost? If you can do that, you will make money consistently all the time, right? If you're a speculative investor and you just think, let me just take a chance.
Yeah, because my friends are doing it.
Exactly. And you don't do any homework, well, guess what? You can lose money fairly quickly because you would probably overpay for the property. You won't know the extent of how much damage there is, or how much to fix up, and then you can't really sell it at a profit again. So,
Yeah, it's Property Explained with Team Akinusi. This happens every Wednesday around about this time, and it's all things property. Now, as we wrap up our conversation, Tim, here's a tweet from Mantepa Ana saying, is it true that if your property gets repossessed, you still have to pay off the loan even though the bank will sell it?
Well, if there is a shortfall and you haven't come to agreement with them, right, well, then they still hold you liable for that, to try to recover their money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the short answer to that is yes.
Yes. There are instances where that will happen.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is get shortfall, or is there cover of such? I mean, for a layman,
Well, I think the key thing is try to work with the banks through this process, right? Because by the time it goes legal, the banks have pools of resources. You can't beat them out on it, and they will go through it in a very methodical way. So you really don't want to be in that position. So I would say, just speak to them, don't run, and you will always come to an arrangement with them.
Perfect. Tim, thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to pick your brain or interact with you, how do we find you?
Please reach out to us if you are in this situation, or you'd like some advice. Reach out to us on mortgagemarket.co.za, or reach out to us on Instagram at mortgage.market, or Facebook at mortgagemarket_SA.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Property Explained with Tim Akinusi, waking up on MetroFM.